At the 2021 Italian Grand Prix, there was an incident that broke Twitter. Again. Basically, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton came together, and the makers of Drive to Survive and various YouTubers started rubbing their hands together with glee as they knew they were going to get some guaranteed viewage. But while many had their opinion on who was to blame and who caused it and who's a fanboy of who, and one person calling me British Homer, which isn't original, my wife's nickname for me is Homer, one piece of information got lobbed around the internet, and I was intending to do a video on this kind of thing because I do find it genuinely interesting. And that is the claim that Lewis Hamilton ignored blue flags when leaving the pits at Monza. So with that in mind, here's a brief video that will somehow be longer than 8 minutes on the absolute minefield that is blue flags and what they actually mean. And the reason I call it a minefield is because there are different rules for different series. Also, I've got no clue how that happened either. So we'll start with the ruling that we're all too familiar with, and that is blue flag rules within Formula 1. The blue flag in Formula 1 is shown to drivers who are about to be caught by the leaders or anybody else who has completed more laps than the driver in question. Now, under the sporting regulations, the drivers who are being lapped or shown the blue flag are required to move over or otherwise allow faster cars to pass within a certain time frame or risk getting a penalty. Blue flags are also used in qualifying and practice to signify to drivers on their out laps that there are drivers on time laps approaching and that they are not to hold up those drivers, otherwise they get a penalty. And there was a time back in the 1960s that blue flags didn't exist at all, and Jackie Stewart once said that it was something you had to learn to be able to do. Although, as a bonus fact, blue flags were used as early as 1903 to denote a portion of the track where it was considered dangerous to overtake, and yellow flags were used to signify a compulsory pit stop as used on the Paris-Madrid race of 1903. And as another bonus fact, the rule of move over for lapping traffic as we know it today wasn't introduced into Formula 1 until 1995, so barely over 25 years ago. So these blue flags and the flashing blue lights seen at the side of the track are shown to potentially lapped drivers when the car is around 1.2 seconds behind. It's also written in Appendix H of the International Sporting Code that the blue flag should normally be waved as an indication to a driver that he or she is about to be overtaken, but there are other parts of that appendix that we'll get to in a bit. So in Formula 1 at least, blue flag is essentially move over. You're required to, under the rules of the sport. But like I've said, the blue flag rules are different in other sports. Now in endurance racing, I'll rephrase, multi-class endurance racing, the blue flag is advisory. Advisory compared to Formula 1, that is. That's because in multi-class racing, each class is treated as a separate race. So GTLM is one race, LMP2 is another race, and Hypercar is a third race in the World Endurance Championship, for example. They are all just happening to be on the same track at the same time. 3 separate races, all happening concurrently. So in this instance, the blue flag is shown purely to warn the GTLMs, for example, that the faster Hypercar and LMP2s are approaching, and that the sporting regulations may state that it's the responsibility of the faster traffic to pass safely, and the car being shown the blue flag is not obliged to dive out of the way whatsoever. Although it has to be said that that lapped car is obliged to give some sort of racing room or sort of help the passing cars, so to speak. And now I can't find confirmation, and it may just be a gentleman's agreement, that the only time these cars are obliged to move over a la Formula 1 is when it's members of the same class that are lapping them, but like I say, I can't find confirmation, so if you do know a bit more than me, leave it down in the comments. So in this instance, and you may be familiar with this if you're on iRacing, that the blue flags shown in endurance racing are more like this. A blue flag with a yellow stripe. In this instance, it's not so much part like the Red Sea like in Formula 1, but more, you've got faster traffic approaching, be careful. And this is also the case in things like VLN that's held on the Nordschleife. Because it's so damn difficult to pass, the flags there signal to drivers that the car coming up behind is faster than you, not for position, and that you don't need to try and race it. And this rule can be confusing to people who have only ever watched Formula 1. Even Googling these rules, a lot of people make mention of the blue flag rules in Formula 1, and then the next post underneath is, yeah, but this isn't Formula 1. It's a bit like going, yeah, but in rugby league, in a room full of people who watch rugby union, this ain't rugby league. Yeah, rugby league, rugby union, they play to 2 different rule books. And yes, I'm actually guilty of shouting blue flags at my TV or computer screen when watching things like British GT or the Bathurst 12 Hour. And obviously IndyCar and NASCAR will have their own rules regarding blue flags, and I can only assume that on ovals the rulings can be different and or pretty strict, for safety and things like that. But like I say, if you do have info as to how IndyCar and NASCAR do their blue flags and stuff like that, let me know down in the comments, and who knows, maybe I'll even pin it so people can learn. So then, what about Lewis Hamilton at Monza? Well, like mentioned at the top of the video, people claim Lewis ignored blue flags, but I'm sorry to say that he actually didn't. At the end of pit lanes around the world in a multitude of series, from Formula 1 to Endurance to DTM to, national level touring car competitions or whatever, there will be a set of traffic lights at the end of the pit lane that will display different lights depending on track status. Red signifies that the track or the pit lane exit is closed and you do not pass the speed limiter line. Green signifies that the track and pit lane exit are open and you are free to enter the track. Yellow may be displayed under certain caution conditions like local yellow or even full course yellow conditions, something like that. And then blue to signify that someone is coming behind you. And in the latter case, that's exactly what it means. Someone is coming behind you. And at tracks like Monza, where you're merging onto a track where cars are doing 220 miles an hour, you definitely need that sort of thing, because if there are cars battling, you're going to know that they're coming. And this is where we return to Appendix H of the International Sporting Code, 2.5.5.1d of Appendix H of the International Sporting Code to be precise, which sounds like an IP address. Now, I've already covered the first portion, that it is waved as an indication to a driver that they are about to be overtaken, but underneath it states that a stationary flag should be displayed to a driver leaving the pits if traffic is approaching on the track. Stationary is advisory. Waved is an order. That blue flag that everybody claims Hamilton ignored was the blue flag with the yellow stripe, for want of a better phrase. It was an advisory that there were cars approaching, in this case Norris and Verstappen. Furthermore, Hamilton, Norris and Verstappen were all on the lead lap, so under the rules Hamilton was not obliged to do anything for Norris and Verstappen as they came by. The only thing he was required to do under the rules of the sport was to stay to the right of the white line when exiting the pit lane. Once that line finishes, he is allowed to make his way to the left to open up turn 1. If Hamilton was a lap down, then he would have had to have slowed down when leaving the pits to allow Norris and Verstappen's safe passage by. But like I said, he was on the lead lap with the McLaren and the Red Bull, so under no obligation whatsoever to let both of them past. Norris got through, but then there was the battle between him and Verstappen that ended up with Lewis ending up with a bonk to the noggin. So hopefully that's given you an overview of blue flags and how just because that's the case in one series doesn't mean that's the case for all of them. And I also hope it's put to bed that strange belief that Hamilton was obliged to let Verstappen through. So if you have learned something new here today, give the video a thumb up, maybe even give it 2 if you can, if you've got like alt accounts or something like that. And for more like this, why not hit subscribe and get ye olde bell on so you never miss a future video from this channel. Big thanks to the patrons of Patreon for their continued support, and if you want to join them or just join the chatter on Discord or follow my random thoughts on Twitter or some of the weird stuff I see in the world on Instagram, I'll leave all the relevant links you need down in the description box for you. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a great day wherever you live in the world, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. So until then, goodbye.